So, Mr. Laszlo, very good lecture about Akashic records. I agree with everything, but I have a little detail to contribute to the altered state of consciousness in which it is possible to, metaphorically speaking, to read from the Akasha or to be inspired to feel the unity and to be formed by the morphogenetic fields of your own past or whatever. But this altered state of consciousness is actually an ecstatic soul. In the realm of centric phenomenology, we say that the cognitive functions, the so-called consciousness, self-consciousness, personal will, and objectifying perception and conceptual thinking are functional changes of the morphogenetic soul field. So there is one unity. The theory I have described is called one field and one source of life. This is where Nietzsche comes in. One source of life, either strong or weak, fresh or young, or old or exhausted, and necessarily the individual organisms in the biosphere must die or wane or dissipate, because then new generation will come, new individuals, because the old body, old individuals, both the soul field and the body and metabolism and all of that, it is actually full of the past. It is come to the maximum of information, and the sense of Rupert Sheldrake, the forms of the organism, even the whole metabolism, even the whole instincts, are an expression of the Akashic field. It is collecting, and solidifying and growing. The morphogenetic field gets more and more information as it has more and more past behind it, which lives in the present, which affects the present. So one day, one moment, it is enough, and then mistakes would happen in the translation if there's too much information. So one chapter is finished, another chapter begins. So this is one of our details we would like to contribute to your research, that everything happens in the soul, in the morphogenetic field of the soul, because it is capable to unite with the cosmic morphogenetic field, with the local morphogenetic field, with the morphogenetic field of the species, with the individual morphogenetic field, in the sense of the past of the individual organism or individual human being. The trouble with man is that he is disturbing this direct embodiment of the past in the present moment by his cognitive functions, because the cognitive functions are singular. They are acts of consciousness. They are like shots or lines which have a certain goal, a certain limited object at the end of the subjective consciousness, which is directed, like a Husserl phenomenology. Consciousness is always directed, is intentional, and selects one object, actually creates the object out of the phenomenal flow. And the conceptual thinking freezes basically the always original new experience to abstract concepts that are valid everywhere and always. But the great advantage of the human race in its early stages that they could do this. And it was done by enlarging, expanding the morphogenetic field of the soul so that it could experience more of the so-called past in the present moment, which became memory, and it could imagine more of the possible action or the possible states of the present moment, which became the so-called imagination or the future imagination. This expansive quality of the morphogenetic field is everywhere. But animals and plants have a rather limited scope, whereas man has a wide range of expansion for his field. But just because of the fact that it became very complicated and very dense as far as information influx is concerned, so many fields were penetrating his morphogenic field, his soul field, that the mirror of the soul, which we have introduced to diversify it from the analytical, directed, intentional, reductive consciousness, we call it mirror of the soul. All animals and all children and all ecstatic man experience what they experience. They are not automata. And then it is the mirror of the soul. But the mirror of the soul became so full of mirrored moments and wide range of perceptions and wide range of memories and imaginations that it became somehow slower than with the animals who live in the immediate present all the time, which is rather reduced, according to their instincts. Their habitat completely determines them. And so it became possible for the flow of phenomena to slow down, become complicated, and then somehow, which is not yet clear why, a center of a point of the slowing and reducing and selecting became necessary, which we call the ego. Like in the river, if you throw a stone inside a mountain brook or a pond which is nevertheless flowing, it creates a trace of interference in the flow of water. And in the same, the 5 cognitive functions of man are interference or functional changes in the morphogenetic field of the soul. There is no ontological opposition between cognitive functions, the ego, consciousness, and the soul. It's simply a derivation of the soul. So that's why it's correct that to clean the river of the soul, to clean the mirror of the soul, we have to get rid of analytical consciousness, of conceptual thinking, and of objectified perception, and of personal egoistic will to, even to understanding. Like Krishnamurti said, don't try to understand what I'm saying in logical terms, in conceptual terms. Try to feel and to see and observe your drive to understand. Why do you all the time understand in conceptual form? And that's the problem, because the whole philosophy and psychology and science and religion and ideology and politics is conceptual. That's why we have so many disasters now, because the conceptual models of reality are only approximations. The part of the whole can never understand in concepts the whole. It always makes mistakes. This is Nietzsche. It's always a necessary mistake. And if we make a conceptual model of reality, in perception, we also select, but it is a kind of species-induced selecting. That is why we have survived, that we have ignored a lot of other information that even we did not perceive, because our organs of perceptions were not capable to register it. But when we develop modern science and try to conceptualize the deepest levels of matter and life, we also make mistakes, approximations. But the technology that is built on these models can destroy matter, and it can destroy life, as we have seen in the atomic weapons and in the genetic manipulation. So I agree with you that it has to be an altered state of consciousness to read from the Akasha, to merge with the morphogenetic field of cosmos or of your locality, or even of the individual plant, animals, and man which you are in sympathy with. But this altered state of consciousness is, after all, mirror of the soul. It is the soul which has been freed from the 5 cognitive derivations, disturbances, protuberances. As you see, we have changed the values according to Nietzsche. Descartes described the soul as a disturbance of the logos, of the analytical reason, of that which is measurable and distinct and exact. We turn it all around. We say that reason, analytical reason, is a disturbance of the morphogenetic field of the soul. And this is the cause why, through so many centuries in philosophy and psychology, religion, and so, the mind and reason and consciousness and soul and spirit, these are all concepts of these disciplines that are thrown together, and there is no clear understanding, intuitively experience, understanding what we can do in the bardic way of thinking, yes, and new methods of philosophy and thinking, is that we achieve the altered state of consciousness, so we free ourselves from analytical thinking. We clean the mirror of the soul. One of the methods is this bardic method of vibration of string instruments on your body, because the guitar is lying on your brow, on your chest, on your heart, on your stomach, like in the old times the bards were holding the harp, and the harp was touching the body, and they had visions. They were seeing visual images that were loaded with emotion. That is actually the Akashic field was opening itself to them, because they were in the similar frequency, freed from the ego, free from the desire of the personal will to understand it. Because if you can understand it, a concept, then you can build a science on it, knowledge, gnosis, and then can you use it to achieve power, even if it would be only a power of wisdom, so-called. You can start a school and teach. And for us, it is a kind of a childish admiration and ecstasy of a poet when we actually passively receive visual imagery and emotional flow and insights that we name. We use words to name it. You can use words to signify concepts, which is the typical scientific way of analytical reason. And no, we don't want to do this. We actually don't want, we are drawn to this other method, to wait passively, to be embraced by the great mother biospheric morphogenetic field of all life. And then we name it if we want to use the human speech to tell it, okay, to pass the information on, but we don't have to do it. If you do it purely in the ecstatic mode of listening to the Akasha, we are like in a dream, in a wakeful state. So this is the little contribution I want to make, and also a concept of time. We say that there is no past in the sense of ontologically remaining a trace, like in the film Interstellar where you would have the past in frozen compartments. There is only a present moment that is growing like a tree. All the past is affecting the present moment, like that what was yesterday and a year ago, or whatever what happened, rain, sun, and season is affecting the tree, and the tree is growing. The roots are growing, and the leaves are growing, and the stem is growing, and you see it all the time. You see it, okay, in your permanent present. So the present is like a growing cloud of embodying information. All the morphogenetic fields in the locality are united, and the innate quality of the morphogenetic field, or of the informational field, or of the Akashic field, or whatever you want, is to embody into matter. So it is growing all the time. So that's why all is present, even from your subjective point of perspective. Locality is important because it is easier to open to the local morphogenetic fields, but if you get into a deep ecstasy, you can also receive morphogenetic field information from far away, both spatially and both in terms of time, because everything is in the present moment. Future does not exist in ontological terms at all, but it is, as you have said, determined partly by that what is in the present. How the future will embody, or what morphogenetic fields, which morphogenetic fields will embody in the conceptual future, depends on how and in what ecstatic state, as far as man is concerned, in what ecstatic state your mirror of the soul shall be in the time, in that ever expanding moment before the so-called conceptually imagined future will come, yeah? Because you can change it. I mean, it can be changed by your ability to merge your soul field with far away soul fields. So then something more complex or beautiful will embody in the so-called future. But from the perspective of the ever-enlarging moment of the present, future does not exist ontologically. So this is my contribution to your project. And I would like to specialize in, I must, my fate and my desire and my passion is to search for methods, new methods, as Nietzsche have said, and the method is always the last what is discovered at the end of a paradigm. You can stay in the old paradigm and research forever, but it will not break the barrier of concepts which the last paradigm has created. So one of those methods of thinking is this. I call it method La Prima, old bardic inspirational naming of visions, feelings, emotions that are revealed to the bard. Now, okay. Others are like Qigong, sport. If it could be done in a community of bards, I don't know. Must be tried. Not And the proof of this method is your body. Because if you are able to enlarge your soul field, to let it expand, to let it be penetrated by the local morphogenetic field of nature, of the lakes, of the seas, of the skies, and even of the animals, and of then you will be renewed, yes? Because even time itself is renewing, is growing young. Né? It's growing young because it is the past is renewing in the present. But it does not change the fact that one day these attractors, what you have called attractors, this is the innate desire or innate embodiment of harmony, of perfection, yeah? And it has to happen in stages, because one individual organism cannot become so perfect as the cosmos, né? The information will get too much, and mistakes shall happen in the transcription, in the embodiment of such a large, vast information. And so it is desirable that this one individual will fade and afresh a new one. Okay, this is what I mean by incarnation. Incarnation happens during your lifetime if you are open to it. And so so I wish I could somehow contribute to the cosmic and planetary and local and even personal morphogenetic field, my field and your institution field. This is from Pavel Janda, from the sunrise at the Lake Constance in Germany, okay, Swiss border. 24 August 2023.